The spring air was thick with the promise of summer, as it drifted through the open windows of Overbrook High School on that fateful Saturday evening of May 18, 2018. The gymnasium had been transformed into a magical wonderland for the junior-senior prom, with twinkling lights strung across the ceiling and silver and blue streamers creating an ethereal atmosphere that made every teenager feel like they were living in a fairy tale. Madison Clark stood near the punch bowl, adjusting the delicate straps of her emerald green satin dress for what felt like the 100th time that evening. At 17 years old, she was a junior at Overbrook High, known for her infectious laugh, her dedication to the school newspaper, and her dream of becoming a journalist like her idol, Barbara Walters. She had shoulder-length auburn hair that caught the light beautifully under the disco ball, and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mischief in equal measure. Madison lived with her mother, Janet Clark, a single parent who worked double shifts as a nurse at Presbyterian Hospital to provide for her daughter. Her father had left when Madison was just 5 years old, leaving Janet to raise her daughter alone in their modest row house on Pine Street in West Philadelphia. Despite the financial struggles, Janet had managed to save enough money to buy Madison the perfect prom dress from a boutique in Center City, knowing how important this night was to her daughter. The dress itself was a masterpiece of teenage dreams realized. Emerald green satin that flowed like water when Madison walked, with intricate beadwork around the bodice that caught and reflected the light with every movement. The dress had cost more than Janet could really afford, but seeing the joy on Madison's face when she tried it on had made every extra shift at the hospital worth it. Madison's date for the evening was Tyler Richardson, a senior on the basketball team who had been working up the courage to ask her out for months. Tyler was popular and kind, with the sort of easy confidence that came from being well-liked without having to try too hard. He wore a classic black tuxedo with an emerald green bow tie that perfectly matched Madison's dress, a detail that had required 3 trips to the rental shop to get exactly right. The couple had arrived at prom with Madison's best friend Ashley Martinez and her date, Kevin Thompson. The 4 of them had spent the early part of the evening taking what felt like hundreds of photos, dancing to everything from current pop hits to classic slow songs, and laughing at the elaborate decorations that the prom committee had spent weeks perfecting. As the evening progressed, Madison seemed to become increasingly distracted by something that none of her friends could identify. Ashley noticed that Madison kept glancing toward the gymnasium's exit doors, as if she was expecting someone or something to appear. When Ashley asked her about it, Madison just smiled and said she thought she had heard someone calling her name, but it was probably just the echo from the sound system. Around 10:30, the prom king and queen were announced, Tyler's best friend Marcus and Madison's classmate Sophia, and everyone gathered around the makeshift stage to watch the crowning ceremony. It was during this moment of distraction, when all eyes were focused on the front of the gymnasium, that Madison seemed to simply vanish into thin air. Tyler was the first to notice she was gone. One moment she had been standing right beside him, applauding for Marcus and Sophia, and the next moment she was nowhere to be seen. At first he assumed she had gone to the bathroom or stepped outside for some fresh air, but as the minutes ticked by and she didn't return, Tyler began to worry. Ashley joined the search, checking the bathrooms, the hallways, and even the parking lot outside the school. They found Madison's small silver purse on a table near where they had been standing, with her phone, lipstick, and the corsage Tyler had given her still inside. Her car keys were missing, but her mother's Honda Civic was still in the parking lot, exactly where Madison had left it when they arrived. The prom chaperones were notified around 11:15, and Principal Williams made the decision to contact both Madison's mother and the Philadelphia Police Department. Janet Clark arrived at the school still wearing her hospital scrubs, having rushed directly from her shift when she received the terrifying phone call that her daughter was missing. Officer Maria Santos of the Philadelphia Police Department's Special Victims Unit was the first responder on the scene. Officer Santos had 15 years of experience with missing persons cases and immediately began interviewing Madison's friends, classmates, and anyone else who might have seen her leave the gymnasium. The initial investigation revealed a troubling lack of concrete information. Despite the gymnasium being crowded with over 200 students, faculty, and chaperones, no one could remember seeing Madison actually leave the building. The school's security cameras had captured her arriving with Tyler around 7:30, but the cameras in the gymnasium had been temporarily disconnected for the prom to create better ambiance with the lighting setup. The parking lot cameras showed Madison's car remaining in the same spot throughout the entire evening, and the cameras at all the school's exits showed no sign of Madison leaving the building either alone or with anyone else. It was as if she had simply evaporated from the gymnasium floor during those few minutes when everyone's attention was focused on the prom king and queen ceremony. Detective Ray Morrison, a veteran investigator with the Philadelphia Police Department, took over the case on Monday morning. Detective Morrison had handled hundreds of missing persons cases throughout his 22-year career, but he had never encountered a disappearance quite like Madison's, a complete vanishing from a crowded, supervised event, with no witnesses and no apparent means of exit. The investigation quickly expanded beyond the high school. Madison's social media accounts were analyzed for any signs of depression, secret relationships, or plans to run away, but her online presence revealed a normal, happy teenager looking forward to her senior year in college applications. Her grades were excellent, she had no history of rebellious behavior, and all of her friends described her as excited about prom and her future plans. Detective Morrison interviewed Tyler Richardson extensively, knowing that romantic relationships were often connected to teen disappearances. Tyler was visibly shaken by Madison's disappearance and provided a detailed account of their evening together. He insisted that Madison had seemed happy and excited throughout the night, with no signs of distress or desire to leave. The detective also spoke with Ashley Martinez, Madison's closest friend since middle school. Ashley revealed that Madison had been having strange dreams in the weeks leading up to prom, dreams about dancing in a beautiful ballroom that seemed to exist in a different time period, with people wearing clothing from what Madison described as the 1940s or 1950s. According to Ashley, Madison had become somewhat obsessed with these dreams, often sketching the ballroom and the people she saw in her dreams during class. The sketches showed remarkable detail for dream imagery: an elegant ballroom with crystal chandeliers, couples dancing in formal wear from decades past, and always in the center of the ballroom, a figure in an emerald green dress that looked remarkably similar to Madison's prom dress. Janet Clark provided Detective Morrison with Madison's dream journal, which she had been keeping for several months before her disappearance. The journal entries revealed a pattern of increasingly vivid dreams about the mysterious ballroom, with Madison describing the experience as feeling more real than real life, and expressing a growing desire to find this place in the waking world. One entry, dated just 3 days before prom, read, "The ballroom is calling to me again. I can hear the music even when I'm awake now. This beautiful orchestra playing songs I've never heard but somehow know by heart. The woman in the green dress keeps beckoning to me, and I think she wants to tell me something important. Maybe at prom, when I'm wearing my green dress, I'll finally understand what she's trying to say." Dr. Sarah Hoffman, a psychologist specializing in adolescent behavior, was consulted to analyze Madison's dream journal and mental state. Dr. Hoffman noted that while vivid dreams were normal for teenagers, the level of detail and consistency in Madison's descriptions was unusual. She suggested the possibility that Madison was experiencing what psychologists call reality testing difficulties, but emphasized that this alone wouldn't explain her physical disappearance. The search for Madison expanded throughout Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. Her photograph was distributed to bus stations, train stations, and airports. The FBI was contacted and assisted with checking for any signs that Madison had been trafficked or had traveled across state lines. Despite extensive efforts, no trace of Madison Clark was found. As weeks turned into months, the case began to receive media attention throughout the Delaware Valley. Madison's story was featured on local news stations, in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and eventually on national programs like America's Most Wanted. The coverage brought in hundreds of tips and potential sightings, but none led to any concrete information about Madison's whereabouts. Janet Clark became a tireless advocate for her missing daughter, organizing search parties, distributing flyers, and maintaining an active social media presence dedicated to finding Madison. The strain of her daughter's disappearance took a severe toll on Janet's health and financial situation, as she reduced her work hours to focus on the search effort. Tyler Richardson graduated from high school that June, but the celebration was overshadowed by Madison's absence. He postponed his plans to attend Penn State University, and instead stayed in Philadelphia to help with the search efforts. The guilt of being Madison's date the night she disappeared weighed heavily on him, despite reassurance from police and family that he bore no responsibility for what had happened. As the first anniversary of Madison's disappearance approached, Detective Morrison received permission to conduct a more thorough search of Overbrook High School. Using ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging equipment, investigators examined every possible hiding place within the building. including areas that had been inaccessible during the initial search. The technological search revealed several interesting anomalies. In the basement beneath the gymnasium, the radar detected what appeared to be a void space that wasn't accounted for in the building's architectural plans. When investigators accessed this area, they found an old fallout shelter that had been built during the Cold War era and later sealed off when the gymnasium was renovated in the 1990s. The fallout shelter was empty, except for some old civil defense supplies and vintage furniture from the 1950s. However, investigators noted that the dust patterns in the shelter suggested that someone had been in the space recently. There were footprints in the dust that appeared to match the size and style of women's dress shoes, and some of the vintage furniture had been moved into what looked like a dance configuration. More intriguingly, the investigators found evidence of recent electrical activity in the shelter, despite the fact that the power to the space had been disconnected decades earlier. Dr. Patricia Wells, an electrical engineer from Temple University, was brought in to examine the anomalous readings and couldn't provide a conventional explanation for the electrical phenomena they detected. In the second year after Madison's disappearance, several students and faculty at Overbrook High began reporting strange experiences in the gymnasium during evening events. Security guards reported hearing music and laughter coming from the gymnasium late at night when the building was supposed to be empty. When they investigated, they would find the gymnasium dark and silent. But several witnesses described the sensation of having interrupted something important. Mrs. Catherine Ross, the school's longtime janitor, reported seeing couples dancing in the gymnasium during her early morning cleaning rounds. When she turned on the full lights, the dancers would disappear, but Mrs. Ross swore she could still hear the faint sound of orchestra music echoing from the walls. These reports were initially dismissed as stress-related hallucinations, but they became too frequent and consistent to ignore. Dr. Michael Chen, a physicist from the University of Pennsylvania, who specialized in studying unusual electromagnetic phenomena, was invited to investigate the reports at Overbrook High. Dr. Chen's equipment detected significant electromagnetic anomalies in the gymnasium, particularly in the area where Madison was last seen standing. According to Dr. Chen's measurements, the gymnasium seemed to be experiencing what he termed temporal field fluctuations, energy patterns that suggested the space might be somehow connected to or overlapping with another time period. While he emphasized that such phenomena were purely theoretical according to current scientific understanding, the readings were consistent with theoretical models of time distortion. Dr. Chen's findings attracted the attention of Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a quantum physicist from Princeton University who had been studying reports of temporal anomalies at various locations around the world. Dr. Warren's research suggested that certain places on Earth might naturally develop temporal thin spots, where the normal flow of time becomes distorted. According to Dr. Warren's theories, these temporal anomalies could theoretically allow people to slip between different time periods under very specific circumstances. She noted that emotional intensity, such as the excitement and anticipation associated with prom night, might make individuals more susceptible to these temporal shifts. In the third year after Madison's disappearance, Tyler Richardson finally began his college studies at Temple University, where he majored in journalism, inspired by Madison's own passion for the field. However, he continued to visit Overbrook High School regularly, hoping to find some new clue about what had happened to Madison. During one of these visits, Tyler had an experience that would haunt him for years to come. While standing in the gymnasium late one evening after a community meeting, Tyler heard the faint sound of music and laughter. As he listened more carefully, he recognized the song as "At Last" by Etta James, the same song that had been playing when he and Madison shared their last dance on prom night. Following the sound, Tyler felt drawn to the exact spot where he and Madison had been standing when she disappeared. As he stood there, the gymnasium around him seemed to shimmer and change. For just a moment he saw the space as it had been on prom night, decorated with lights and streamers, filled with dancing couples in formal wear. In the center of this ghostly prom scene, Tyler saw Madison in her emerald green dress, dancing with a partner whose face he couldn't quite make out. She looked happy and radiant, moving gracefully to music that seemed to come from a different era entirely. When Madison noticed Tyler watching her, she smiled and waved, mouthing the words, "I'm okay," before the vision faded and Tyler found himself alone in the empty gymnasium. Tyler immediately reported this experience to Detective Morrison, who by this point had become personally invested in solving Madison's case. While the detective couldn't officially investigate claims of supernatural phenomena, He documented Tyler's account and noted its consistency with other reports from the school. Dr. Agnes Whitman, a paranormal researcher from Villanova University, became interested in the case after hearing about the various unexplained experiences at Overbrook High. Dr. Whitman had spent decades studying cases where people seemed to vanish into different time periods, and she believed Madison's disappearance fit a pattern she had observed at other locations around the world. According to Dr. Whitman's research, there were documented cases throughout history of people disappearing during emotionally significant events and later being glimpsed in what appeared to be different time periods. She theorized that certain individuals might be naturally sensitive to temporal fluctuations and could inadvertently slip between different eras under the right conditions. Dr. Whitman noted that prom night represented a perfect storm of emotional intensity, formal dress, music, and dancing, all elements that appeared frequently in historical accounts of temporal displacement. She suggested that Madison might have accidentally stepped through a temporal barrier into a past or parallel version of the gymnasium during a 1940s or 1950s dance event. In the fourth year after Madison's disappearance, Janet Clark made the difficult decision to hold a memorial service for her daughter. While she refused to give up hope that Madison might still be alive, she needed closure and wanted to honor her daughter's memory. The service was held at the First Baptist Church of West Philadelphia, where Madison had been baptized as a child. The memorial service was attended by hundreds of people, including Madison's classmates, teachers, and community members who had been touched by her story. Tyler Richardson gave a heartfelt eulogy in which he promised to become the journalist Madison had always dreamed of being, dedicating his career to telling stories about people who might otherwise be forgotten. During the memorial service, several attendees reported unusual experiences. The church's organ seemed to play softly on its own, despite no one being seated at the instrument. Some witnesses heard a young woman's laughter echoing through the sanctuary, and several people claimed to see a figure in an emerald green dress sitting in the pew where Madison's family was seated. These phenomena continued after the memorial service, with church staff reporting ongoing mysterious music and sightings. Pastor Williams, who had known Madison since she was a child, began to believe that her spirit was somehow still connected to the places and people she had loved during her lifetime. In the fifth year after her disappearance, Madison's case caught the attention of Sarah Johnson, an investigative journalist for Philadelphia Magazine, who was researching a story about unsolved disappearances in the area. Sarah became fascinated by the temporal anomaly theory surrounding Madison's case and decided to spend a night in the Overbrook High Gymnasium to see if she could experience any of the reported phenomena firsthand. Sarah's investigation took place on May 18th, exactly 5 years after Madison's disappearance. She brought with her sophisticated recording equipment and a photographer to document any unusual occurrences. What she experienced that night would convince her that Madison's story was unlike any missing persons case she had ever researched. Shortly after midnight, Sarah began to hear the faint sound of big band music coming from somewhere within the gymnasium. As the music grew louder, she started to see translucent figures appearing throughout the space. Couples dancing in formal wear from what appeared to be the 1940s and 1950s. The scene was like a ghostly recreation of a dance that might have taken place in the gymnasium decades earlier. Among the dancing couples, Sarah clearly saw Madison in her emerald green prom dress, looking exactly as she had on the night she disappeared. Madison was dancing with a young man in a military uniform who appeared to be from the World War II era. She looked happy and content, moving gracefully to music that seemed to bridge different time periods. When Madison noticed Sarah watching her, she approached the edge of what seemed to be an invisible barrier between the two time periods. Madison spoke, but her voice sounded distant and echoed, as if coming from across a vast space. "Tell them I'm safe," Madison said. "Tell them I found where I was meant to be. The music never stops here, and the dance goes on forever." Sarah tried to ask Madison questions about how she had gotten to this place and whether she could return, but Madison just smiled and pointed to something behind Sarah. When Sarah turned around, she saw her own reflection in a mirror that hadn't been there moments before. But in the reflection, she was wearing a formal gown from the 1950s, as if she too was becoming part of this temporal dance. The vision lasted for nearly an hour before gradually fading. Sarah's recording equipment had captured the music and what appeared to be electromagnetic disturbances, but the visual phenomena could only be described in her notes. When she tried to move closer to where Madison had been standing, she felt an invisible barrier that prevented her from entering that space. Sarah's article about her experience was published in Philadelphia Magazine and quickly gained national attention. The story attracted the interest of researchers, paranormal investigators, and people from around the world who had similar experiences to share. Madison's case became a focal point for discussions about the nature of time, consciousness, and the possibility that some people might be able to exist in multiple temporal dimensions. Dr. James Patterson, a theoretical physicist from the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, became interested in Madison's case as a potential real-world example of theoretical concepts he had been studying. Dr. Patterson proposed that certain locations might develop what he called temporal resonance chambers, where emotional energy from significant events could create lasting distortions in space-time. According to Dr. Patterson's theories, Madison might have become trapped in a temporal loop that continuously replayed idealized versions of dance events from different time periods. While this would mean she was still alive in some sense, it would also mean she was existing outside the normal flow of time, and might not be able to return to the present without outside intervention. In the 6th year after Madison's disappearance, an event occurred that would provide the most concrete evidence yet about her fate. The Philadelphia School District decided to renovate Overbrook High School's basement storage areas to create more classroom space. During the renovation, workers discovered several boxes of items that had apparently been stored and forgotten for decades. One of these boxes, dated 1952, contained costumes and decorations from school dances held in the gymnasium during the 1940s and 1950s. Among these vintage items, workers found something that shouldn't have been possible: Madison's emerald green prom dress, carefully folded and preserved as if it had been placed there recently. Detective Morrison, who had never given up on Madison's case, was immediately notified about the discovery. When he examined the dress, he found that it was definitely the same gown Madison had been wearing on the night she disappeared. The dress was in perfect condition, showing no signs of having been stored for 6 years in a basement environment. More mysteriously, the dress had been altered. When Madison's mother Janet examined it, she noticed that it had been taken in and adjusted to fit someone with slightly different measurements than Madison. The alterations had been done with period-appropriate thread and techniques that matched the other 1950s garments in the storage box. Inside one of the dress's pockets, investigators found a handwritten note in Madison's recognizable handwriting. The note read, "I understand now why I was always drawn to the music of the past. I wasn't meant to live in just one time. I was meant to dance through all of them. I'm not lost. I'm exactly where I was always supposed to be. Thank you for the most beautiful dress in any decade. Love always, Madison." The discovery of the dress confirmed many of the theories that had been developed about Madison's disappearance. It provided physical evidence that she had somehow moved between different time periods and was existing in a temporal space that overlapped with multiple eras. The alterations to the dress suggested that she had been living and growing in this alternative temporal reality. Janet Clark found both comfort and heartbreak in the discovery of Madison's dress. On one hand, it provided confirmation that her daughter was alive and apparently happy in whatever dimension she now inhabited. On the other hand, it seemed to confirm that Madison would never return to the present day in any conventional sense. The dress was preserved by textile experts and became part of a special exhibition at the Philadelphia History Museum, dedicated to unexplained phenomena in the city's past. The exhibition drew visitors from around the world who were interested in temporal anomalies and the possibility that consciousness might not be bound by linear time. Tyler Richardson, who had graduated from Temple University and was working as a reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, wrote a comprehensive series of articles about Madison's case and its implications for understanding the nature of time and human consciousness. His reporting earned him several journalism awards and established his reputation as a thoughtful investigative reporter. In his final article about Madison, Tyler wrote, "Some love stories transcend time itself." Madison Clark didn't disappear on prom night. She discovered that her heart belonged to an era when dance meant something magical, when music could transport you to another world, and when a single evening of formal dance could stretch into eternity. She chose love over time, music over reality, and eternal dance over ordinary life. Dr. Warren and Dr. Patterson collaborated on a research paper about Madison's case that proposed new theories about temporal consciousness and the possibility that human awareness might be capable of existing in multiple time streams simultaneously. Their work influenced a new field of study that combined quantum physics with consciousness research. The gymnasium at Overbrook High School was eventually converted into a memorial space dedicated to Madison and to the phenomenon of temporal displacement. The school administration, initially reluctant to embrace the supernatural aspects of Madison's story, came to see it as a unique part of their institution's history. Students and faculty continued to report occasional sightings of Madison and other dancers from different time periods in the memorial space. These experiences were no longer dismissed or feared, but were instead viewed as a special connection to the school's legacy and to the mystery of human consciousness. Several other cases of temporal displacement began to be reported from around the world, with researchers using Madison's case as a template for understanding these phenomena. Support groups were established for families whose loved ones had experienced similar disappearances, providing a community for those dealing with losses that transcended conventional understanding. Janet Clark eventually found peace with her daughter's fate. She came to believe that Madison had been chosen for something extraordinary, to serve as a bridge between different time periods, and to prove that love and consciousness were not limited by the linear progression of time. Janet established a foundation dedicated to supporting research into temporal phenomena and helping other families navigate similar experiences. The annual prom at Overbrook High School became a special event where students and faculty honored Madison's memory by playing music from multiple decades and encouraging students to appreciate the timeless nature of dance and celebration. Many students reported feeling Madison's presence during these events as if she was dancing alongside them across the boundaries of time. Ashley Martinez, Madison's best friend, became a counselor who specialized in helping teenagers cope with unexplained losses and trauma. She often shared Madison's story as an example of how love and friendship could transcend even the most impossible circumstances. Ashley maintained that she could still feel Madison's presence in her life, guiding and supporting her through important moments. The scientific community remained divided about the implications of Madison's case. While some researchers dismissed the story as elaborate folklore or mass hallucination, others saw it as potential evidence for revolutionary theories about the nature of time, consciousness, and human potential. Dr. Chen continued his research into electromagnetic anomalies at various locations around Philadelphia and discovered several other sites with similar temporal field fluctuations. His work suggested that the phenomenon might be more common than previously thought, but that most cases went unrecorded because they occurred in isolated locations or to people who were unable to document their experiences. Madison's story became part of Philadelphia folklore, joining the ranks of other unexplained phenomena that gave the city its reputation for harboring mysteries. Tour guides began including the Overbrook High School gymnasium on ghost tours and historical walks, sharing Madison's story as an example of love that transcended time itself. The truth about Madison Clark's disappearance was not that she had been killed, kidnapped, or had run away. Instead, she had been chosen to become a guardian of temporal dance, someone who could move freely between different eras to ensure that the joy and beauty of formal dance would never be lost to time. Her emerald green dress, found 6 years later in a storage box from 1952, was not evidence of a tragedy, but proof of a love story that spanned decades. Madison had found her place in a dimension where every prom night, every formal dance, and every moment of musical magic existed simultaneously. She had become eternal dance itself, moving through time to connect young people across generations through the universal language of music and movement. Her disappearance had revealed not an ending, but a transformation into something that transcended the limitations of linear existence. In the end, Madison Clark had found exactly what she had always been searching for in her dreams: a ballroom where the music never stopped, where every dance was perfect, and where love could last forever across all the ages of time. Her story reminded everyone who heard it that some mysteries are too beautiful to be solved completely, and that sometimes the greatest gift is to become part of something larger than ordinary life could ever contain.